Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter and welcome back to Intergames. Today, we're going to be asking ChatGPT to rework a bunch of SMITE 1's problematic gods. Obviously, SMITE 1 has plenty of issues in terms of god designs. I talk about it all the time. ChatGPT is a funny tool that sometimes has some good suggestions and sometimes has some hilariously bad ones. And so, yeah, today we're going to be testing how good it is at god design in video games. Probably not very good. So first up, who should we go for? Let's do Freya first. Alright, there we go. Let's see. He's cooking. It. I have no idea, dude. What gender is ChatGPT? Probably whatever you want it to be, right? I could probably tell it's a man and I believe it's a man. Alright, here we go, boys. It's written in the true style of like a high-res blog post where they give like themes and explain what they're doing, so we'll give this a full read. So, theme and role: Freya, the Norse goddess of love and war, should maintain her identity as a magical ADC, attack damage carry, with a strong focus on hybrid, ranged, and melee combat. That is true. That is what Freya is. That potentially should be what she remains, though I'm not opposed to a full rekit. The redesign should emphasize her dual nature, providing her with versatility in both team fights and dueling scenarios. So, first up, the passive. Freya's attacks and abilities are imbued with a duality of war and love, granting her bonuses based on the stance she adopts. Yo, they're making Freya a stance switcher? ChatGPT are crazy. Mechanics. Freya can toggle between two stances, War stance in red and Love stance in blue. Each stance enhances her abilities differently. War stance provides bonus magical power and lifesteal on her basic attacks and abilities. Love stance increases her movement speed and provides health regeneration over time. Okay. Ability 1, Freya can switch between a melee and ranged mode, each with its own unique benefits. So this is kind of like her 2, I guess. Freya empowers her sword, making her next basic attacks within 5 seconds, cleaving an area around her and deal bonus magical damage. Okay, that's interesting. So instead of being straight up ranged, it's going to be like sort of Bake Kujira style auto attack, so maybe she gets in there a little bit more. I don't hate that. And then Love stance, Freya infuses her staff. I don't know where she got the staff from, but I guess she's dual wielding sword and staff now. Infuses her staff with magic, causing her next basic attacks to heal her for a percentage of the damage dealt and slow the target for a brief duration. Okay, and I'd assume if she's going to be melee, those would just be normal melee basic attacks, whereas these would hit in an area around her. So you can kind of switch between that if you want to be like healing up. Doesn't really say if this is a toggle or not, but I assume it's not based on like the next 5 seconds for this one. Obviously, it's worded kind of weirdly. ChatGPT doesn't really understand fully how SMITE works. This looks like it should be a toggle, but then for the next 5 seconds, so I guess when you toggle, it's like 5 seconds, then you want to toggle back. I have no idea, but honestly, I kind of do like this idea of making her basic attacks cleave in an area around her instead of being like ranged. That's definitely interesting. Moving on, ability 2, Valkyrie's Call. Freya calls upon her Valkyries to either aid her in battle or shield her from harm. In War stance, she summons them to dash forward in a line, dealing magical damage and knocking up. And in Love stance, they surround Freya, creating a protective shield that absorbs a certain amount of damage and provides brief immunity to crowd control effects. You know, I kind of like this, dude. They're kind of going for like a sort of in-there warrior style Freya kit, which is actually what I did in my redesign for her. I actually kind of like some of these ideas. It's not really clear what kind of, like, how she's going to switch stance. I mean, it just says she can toggle, so I guess you can be in one stance at any point. So you could just quickly switch to Love stance and, like, purify crowd control or something that's about to hit you and use it as, like, a parry almost. I kind of like this, dude. I kind of like this. Ability 3, Radiant Light / Enchanting Presence. Freya channels the power of light and enchantment to either devastate her enemies or support her allies. Freya releases a burst of light in a cone in front of her, dealing magical damage and shredding magical prots. Or Freya releases an aura that charms all enemies in a small radius, forcing them to walk towards her and becoming unable to attack or use abilities. So, unable to attack is basically a taunt, but better in the Love stance. Definitely interesting. Definitely interesting. And the ultimate, Goddess Ascended. Freya ascends to her divine form, enhancing all of her abilities and granting her new powers temporarily. Okay, so it's a big fat steroid. Again, kind of like what I did in my Freya redesign, dude. Maybe ChatGPT's pulling from this. I have no idea. Also, apparently, I'm the Goddess Ascendant. Oh my god, look at my webcam right now. Let me just shut my window, dude. Alright, we're back. I'm done with my Goddess Ascension now. We're back to being relatively normal here. So, Freya takes to the skies, gaining increased movement speed and becoming untargetable for a short duration. So, very much like her current ultimate. While in this form, her basic attacks are empowered, dealing increased magical damage and applying additional effects based on her current stance. In War stance, her attacks gain additional splash damage and a chance to critically strike, and in Love stance, her attacks heal nearby allies for a percentage of damage dealt and remove negative status effects. So, I don't know if that means full CC immunity. I have no idea. ChatGPT is probably going to clarify on that, but that's kind of interesting. Yeah, honestly, dude, there's some good ideas here. There genuinely is some good ideas here. Obviously, ChatGPT doesn't really understand how SMITE works. This is not a design that would actually work. There's many, like, fundamental flaws in this. This is just kind of wouldn't work. But honestly, there are some cool ideas. I like the idea of making Freya's enhanced basics do, like, an area around her her instead of, like, ranged. I like the idea of the wall stance and the love stance, giving her a little bit of a supportive aspect. I don't know how lore accurate that is. Someone more versed on Norse lore can correct me down below if that's not very lore accurate, but I like the idea. I'm genuinely impressed by this. This is better than I thought it would be. I thought SMITE ChatGPT would just, like, give me some absolutely ridiculous idea that would never work. Oh, you know what could be funny? Is ChatGPT smart enough to give me, like, damage and healing numbers on this? Let's ask. Alright, let's see what I can come up with. Alright, let's have a quick look at the numbers he's given, because I feel like the numbers are going to be way off. This is why it's going to, like, completely fail, because it's going to have no idea how to actually provide balanced numbers. Like, it probably has access to, obviously, the numbers that are in-game from, like, wikis and stuff like that, but it probably doesn't actually have a concept of, like, what will be balanced in SMITE. So, you know, I guess not too despondent from the regular SMITE balance team, right, boys? I'm kidding. The balance team do a decent job. Okay, so, Wall Stance provides 10% bonus magical power and magical lifesteal on her basic attacks and abilities. That's kind of fine. That's not too bad. Love Stance increases her movement speed by 15% and provides 2% health regeneration per second. Okay, this is why it starts to get bad. Love Stance is just a passive thing. She could just be in Love Stance if she wants to and just constantly regenerate 2% health per second. That's not allowed, ChatGPT. That's not allowed. For the one, which is like the kind of steroids, it's going to add that much magical power per hit. That's quite a lot. That's more than her one, I believe. The cleave radius is 15 units. 15 units radius is absolutely massive. I believe that's bigger than Bakekujira's, because obviously a radius, you know, pi squared for the area is going to be pretty huge around her. The healing, obviously you can't have magical power scaling on healings in SMITE 1 anymore, but we'll let it off on that. It definitely doesn't know that. The healing is honestly kind of fine. I mean, it says it's supposed to heal for a percentage of the damage dealt and it's giving me a flat heal, but we'll just assume it's not percentage of damage dealt and it's a flat heal. It's kind of fine. It's a little bit much for auto attacks, especially because you can build in a lot of attack speed. That's going to be healing allies a lot, but it's not actually too far off. The slow 20% for 2 seconds is kind of fine. Moving on to the 2, so this is the one that someone submit a line and deals damage. That is fine amounts of damage in my opinion for a magical ADC. You don't want it to be too high. Range of 55 units is strong, but definitely could be workable. Reasonable cooldown, maybe a little bit longer if it's going to be a knockup. The shield, 100 to 300 is probably fine, maybe a little on the high end, especially at the later ranks. CC immune duration of 1.5 seconds, though, that shouldn't be the case. This should be like a 0.33 seconds or something. You use it as like a parry or like a quick dodge. And the cooldown probably fine as well. I feel like the cooldown does need to be longer on such a powerful effect as like a brief CC immunity, kind of like Changa 2 on a very long cooldown. There's 3, so this was like the burst of light in a cone that shreds prots, or the like aura that charms all enemies. So damage kind of fine here, a little bit high on the base damage maybe. The prot shred probably shouldn't be quite that much. Maybe should scale up to like only 20 or something. And then this one, the charm duration is definitely too high, especially considering it said that they're not allowed to attack as well. Like most taunts in SMITE, I believe all taunts in SMITE, they actually attack you during it, so it's going to be more powerful than a regular taunt. And I believe this is around the same duration as the Athena taunt, so you definitely want it to be a little bit lower probably. And then the ultimates, this is where she takes this guys, becomes untargetable and gets extra basic attack effects. So the wall stance deals that much bonus damage and has a 20 unit splash radius that needs to be smaller. She also gains a 20% free crit chance, which of course wouldn't really work in SMITE 1, but maybe if this was a design for SMITE 2, this could work. And then the healing heals all allies within 30 units for a good amount, goddamn. And then removes 1 negative status effects from all allies hit. Obviously this would need to be reworked into like, you know, maybe it's just a slow cleanse or just a stun cleanse or maybe very brief CC immunity, I don't know. But yeah, that is really interesting, dude. Obviously the numbers are kind of off in some places, but and it wouldn't really work as like a coherent kit, but there are some good ideas here. There's genuinely some good ideas here in terms of a Freya rework. All right, who should we do next? Let's try Arachne. Alright, here we go. So, theme and role. Arachne, the Greek goddess of spiders, should maintain her identity as a high mobility, high damage assassin who excels at picks off isolated targets. I'm fine with that. The redesign should emphasize her agility and fearsome nature of spiders, providing her with tools to ambush, crowd control, and sustain damage. This seems reasonable. So the passive. Arachne leaves behind webs as she moves, increasing her mobility and getting bonus damage against enemies caught in her web. Oh, so it's like the web trails that get released from like when you get hit by a 3, but permanently. That's honestly kind of interesting. It'd make her really hard to chase down, but like maybe, you know, before a fight you could be like running around sort of like setting up these webs. Depends how long they last. So mechanics here say Arachne's movement leaves trails of webs for 5 seconds. So yeah, maybe you could set up a little bit of a web trap in the jungle if you feel like someone's coming or something. Obviously you'd be able to track Arachne with these very well, so there will be some downside to it. It's honestly kind of an interesting trade-off there. Enemies passing through the webs are slowed by 20%, and Arachne gains 10% movement speed and 5% attack speed when moving on her webs. Additionally, basic attacks against webbed enemies deal 10% bonus damage. This is kind of interesting. Again, I feel like ChatGPT ChatGPT is kind of cooking in a certain way. Like, obviously you couldn't implement it just as this, but there's an interesting idea there, I think. Ability 1, Venomous Bite / Envenom. Arachnid attacks become empowered with venom, dealing damage over time and applying debilitating effects. Within the next 5 seconds, it deals additional damage that applies venom that deals damage over time. Activating this ability again within 5 seconds enhances the venom, slowing the target by 20% for 3 seconds and healing Arachnid for a percentage of the venom damage dealt. So, relatively boring here, honestly. It's basically like her current one, just in a slightly reskinned, different design. The ability of activating the venom again to enhance it is kind of interesting, but this effect is really just like, you just enhance it immediately, because why would you not? I feel like maybe some kind of timed effect with like a trade-off, you know, maybe if you activate it early, you're going to get more total damage, but if you activate it later, maybe you get a longer kind of like CC duration of some kind, you know, maybe some kind of trade-off there could be interesting. Ability 2, Spiderlings. Arachnid summons Spiderlings to aid her in battle, overwhelming her enemies. Of course, you got to have the Spiderlings in there, dude. That's been a part of Arachnid's design forever. Arachnid releases a swarm of Spiderlings that chase and attack enemies, dealing damage and applying a stacking poison debuff. This reduces enemy physical protections by 3% per stack up to 5 stacks. That is kind of reasonable in my opinion. The damage per hit seems kind of fine as well. They last 4 seconds, cooldown of 14. This is interesting, especially if it will be like a full-on swarm, as in like 20 spiders, or maybe it scales up with the ability rank. Maybe it's like, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 spiders or something like that. It might get a little bit ridiculous in terms of like game optimization, but I think it would be funny if it was a genuine swarm that you had to deal with that maybe get wrecked by AoE abilities, but against like basic attackers or whatever, they have some real trouble. Yeah, kind of interesting. Probably couldn't be implemented directly as it is, as usual with a lot of these suggestions from ChatGPT, but there's something interesting there. Ability 3, Tangled Web. Arachnid leaves a large web that ensnares and damages enemies within its radius. Arachnid casts a web at the target area, dealing damage over time and slowing enemies caught within it. Enemies who stay in the web for its full duration are rooted for 1 sec. So not really anything too crazy. You would assume that this Tangled Web would also provide her the passive bonus, so there's a little bit of synergy there. It doesn't say it here, but you would assume so. Kind of a boring ability in general, though. Definitely could be something better put there, I think. Finally, the ultimate, Queen of Spiders. Arachnid ascends to her ultimate form, getting enhanced abilities and unleashing her full spider power. Dude, ChatGPT really likes big steroid ultimates that enhance their abilities, right? It's the same thing for Freya. Arachnid transforms into a spider queen for 10 seconds, getting bonus attack speed, movement speed, and lifesteal. Her abilities also receive additional effects during this time, so she gets up to 70% attack speed, 20% movement speed, up to 40% lifesteal. And then the enhanced abilities, Venomous Bite deals 50% more venom damage, Spiderlings deal 25% more damage and apply 10% slow with each hit, and then the radius is increased by 50% on the Tangled Web, and enemies caught are routed for 2 seconds instead of 1 if they stay for the full duration. So the ability effects are kind of boring. You could definitely do a lot more with that, but I do kind of like the idea of Arachnid becoming a straight up spider queen for 10 seconds, you know, that's kind of interesting. So yeah, overall, not as cool as the Freya redesign, I don't think, but there's definitely some interesting ideas here. As I said, I like the idea of her becoming a straight up spider queen for 10 seconds and having like enhanced abilities. I think that's cool. And I really like the idea of the passive as well. This is actually really cool. All right, who should we do next? Who's problematic in Smite 1? Should we do Nox? Let's do Nox. Okay, this must be a new feature with ChatGPT. I've not used it in a while. It's giving me 2 different responses, and it's asking me to pick which is the best one. We'll read over both of them. We'll actually pick the best one here, see if we can improve ChatGPT a little bit. So first up on the left, Nox, the goddess of the night, should maintain her identity as a high-skill mage. Don't know about that, ChatGPT. With a focus on area control, crowd control, and burst damage. That is accurate, though. The redesign should emphasize her control over darkness and shadows, providing her tools to manipulate the battlefield and hinder her enemies. I like that. Leaning into the debuffs a little bit more. Passive. Nox gains the power of darkness from around her, enhancing her abilities. Dude, ChatGPT really loves enhancing the basic abilities in a different way. To be honest, I kind of like that as a mechanic as well, so I won't complain. When Nox is in the dark, either in shadows or at night in the game's day-night cycle. This is what I mean, dude. ChatGPT doesn't really fully understand what Smite is as a game sometimes. She gains increased magical power and damage mitigation if she's in the shadows. I mean, maybe in Smite 2, there's a lot of fucking shadows coming off the trees in that game. Okay, so the passive we can basically discount. That is not something that would ever work. Smite, surprisingly, does not have a day-night cycle. Shadow Step. Nox steps through the darkness, allowing her to reposition quickly and evade enemies. She dashes a short distance, becoming untargetable during the dash. She leaves behind a shadow that explodes after a brief delay, dealing damage to enemies in the area. That's interesting. I like the idea of leaving behind the shadow after she dashes that you could maybe interact with. Almost a bit like Ao Kuang's 1 decoy, I suppose. You know, maybe you could reactivate to blow it up immediately, or maybe your other abilities could interact with the shadow, expand their range, or like maybe they cast from the shadow in addition to you or something like that. That could be very interesting. Ability 2, Gloom. Nox conjures a field of gloom, sapping the strength of enemies and empowering herself. She creates a zone of darkness at the target location, reducing the magical power and attack speed of enemies within the area while increasing her own magical power. So basically just a buff and debuff area. You could definitely do something more interesting with that, I feel. Shroud of Darkness. Nox envelops herself in a Shroud of Darkness, becoming invisible and gaining movement speed for a short duration. Oh my god, Nox with stealth, dude. That's not something I want to see. Nox becomes invisible for a few seconds, gaining increased movement speed. Upon becoming visible, she releases a burst of dark energy that deals damage and silences enemies. So interesting. I don't hate the design of this in terms of like a stealth ability. I don't think stealth would really fit with this kit or with Nox in general, though. You know, maybe if you were completely rekitting her. I think Nox stealth does kind of fit in terms of like the lore of her. But within her current kit and within this kit that it's given me, probably not. Ultimate Nightfall. Nox calls upon the power of night, plunging the battlefield into darkness and unleashing her full potential. Nox creates an area of total darkness, reducing the vision of all enemies within and dealing damage over time. Enemies caught in the darkness also have their movement speed reduced and are revealed to Nox. So a little bit kind of like a Xbalanque ultimate, but a little bit different. Not really that interesting overall, but yeah, they really leaned into the darkness themes with this one. Let's see what they've got for the response too. Let's see if this one's any better. So Nox, the Greek goddess of night, should maintain her identity as a magical mage with a focus on area control, damage over time, and crowd control. Damage over time, not so much. I mean, I guess she does have some damage over time focuses in her kit, but I wouldn't say she's like dot focus particularly. But yeah, the area control and crowd control, definitely. The redesign should emphasize her thematic role as the Harbinger of Darkness, with abilities that effectively manipulate the battlefield and damage enemies over time. So the passive. Nox's presence creates an aura of darkness around her, amplifying her magical abilities and affecting enemies. Enemies within 20 units of Nox are afflicted with darkness, which reduces their prots and applies a stacking debuff that deals damage. They take increased damage over time from Nox's abilities. And Nox gains magical power for every enemy afflicted by darkness within the radius. So interesting, she just basically has an aura that reduces prots, makes people take more damage, and gives her additional magical power for it. Not anything super crazy, but not terrible. So ability 1, Nox releases a pulse of dark energy or channels the power of night to debilitate her enemies. Nox sends out a shockwave of shadow energy that deals damage and silences enemies, so it's kind of similar to like her Raven in her original design, I guess. And then Nox channels the power of night, reducing the damage enemies can do and providing her a temporary shield. So they don't say how or why you would use each of the different forms. Maybe they think it's from the day-night cycle or something, I don't know. But this shield thing is kind of harkening a little bit back to Nox's original one, where she gained like a 90% damage mitigation shield, but only for like 1 second. I did like that ability, so this could be cool as well. The shield duration says 5 seconds of 40% damage reduction. That's obviously not allowed. You would have to rework this to maybe be more like her original shield, where it's like a short duration but a massive amount of damage reduction. Ability 2, Nox summons a sphere of darkness that pulses with energy, dealing damage and applying a debuff to enemies caught within it. So deals damage per pulse and reduces magical prots and slows the target. Again, kind of boring, not anything too crazy there. Ability 3, Nox creates a zone of darkness. Again, that blinds and disorients enemies within it, causing them to miss their attacks and have reduced accuracy. I mean, accuracy doesn't exist in Smite. It's trying to get it to add it though. 25 to 45% chance to miss abilities and attacks. I would kill myself if they added this to the game. Imagine, dude. You're going for a big fat silo, you hit it on like 3 people, but because you're affected by this ability, you just miss it on all of them. God, that would be horrible. And the ultimate, Eternal Night, Nox engulfs the battlefield in darkness, severely damaging and debuffing all enemies while empowering her own ability. So it deals a lot of damage over 5 seconds, reduces magical prots again. Dude, I feel like she has about 100 flat shred in this kit design. That is kind of insane. And then the empowerment, Nox gains 20% increased damage and 15% cooldown reduction for the duration of the ultimate. So nothing too crazy there in general. These Nox redesigns, they're not that interesting. The Freya one and the Arachne one were definitely some better like designs than these. Overall, I think the one on the right is probably better, though. We'll choose that one. But yeah, that's probably all I've got for this episode. If you guys do enjoy this one, it could be something I could do in the future. You know, maybe take a look at a few other designs that I think are problematic. Maybe Scatty or whatever. Vamana, potentially. There's quite a few I could do for this. So if you guys enjoy this, I could potentially bring out more of these in the future. There's some interesting ideas here. ChatGPT doesn't really have a full grasp of how Smite works, honestly, but there are definitely some kind of cool and interesting ideas that you could take and make into an actual ability that would work. Most of the Freya stuff was actually quite good. Arachne's Spider Queen ultimate and the idea that she leaves webs behind her constantly is kind of cool as well. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys for another one tomorrow on Into Games. Peace.